This video is sponsored by Squarespace.
The period of time between 2008 and 2013 was an explosion in the camera industry, with digital cameras being released left and right. But with so much happening at this time, some beloved companies were sure to be forgotten in the scuffle. That was the case with the Ikonoskop A-Cam D2. This one has been highly requested in the comment section over the past couple of months, and it's no surprise. This is a highly unique digital cinema camera with a tiny 16mm sensor that produced some beautiful images, some would even call filmic, during its short run. But why was this much requested camera seemingly forgotten during its release? And what led to its inevitable demise? Find out today on our Abandoned Camera series.
Welcome to the re-upload of a video that was taken down by YouTube from one of our older series on the channel that focused on abandoned cinema cameras. A fan favorite, and kind of happy to bring this video back. This video is on the very interesting Ikonoskop A-Cam D2, which also had a fascinating 16mm digital sensor. This video was taken down after we got a copyright takedown request over about a 5 to 7 second video clip we used that we could not find sourcing for at the time. The person who requested the takedown did, however, agree to let us keep the video up if we cut that video clip in the video or pay to have it used in the video. And considering it was inconsequential to the video as a whole, we decided to just cut it out. Unfortunately, YouTube's system had some sort of glitch that still pushed through the takedown request, even though we had an agreement with this person and an email from YouTube showing that they had released the video. After we went back and forth with YouTube over this, they refused to reinstate the video, even though we had an email from them and the person who requested the takedown showing the intent to release, and YouTube's own system showing it as well. After a while, it was just not worth the time we were spending getting nowhere with YouTube to reinstate this video. But on the bright side, during this time, we had actually gotten to acquire the camera itself. And here it is. Someone actually made a comment on the Ikonoskop video before it was taken down, looking to sell it, and we were able to get in touch with him, and he sent everything over from Switzerland. So all of this to say, we wanted to re-upload this classic frame Voyager video, as well as add some new context to it, since we, now have the camera, and there are some recent developments in the news about the camera actually being used recently. So join us for the special episode of our Abandoned Camera series as we show you the original story, some new clips we took while we were visiting Banff, and extra information. What more can you ask for?
Though the actual history of the company starts in the 90s, the name Ikonoskop actually has its roots as far back as 1925 and was the first practical video camera tube to be used in the very early stages of television cameras. It would remain the leading video camera tube to be used for early television until 1946. And while there appears to be no connection between these two names and the companies, I would assume that the Ikonoskop name, though spelled differently, is a bit of a callback to early video history, and one that I didn't want to overlook in this history section. Now on to more modern times. The Ikonoskop company had been around since 1999, founded by Goran Olsson and Daniel Jonseter, both active filmmakers. They started the company out of a personal need for new tools for filmmaking. Throughout the journey, we have been convinced that there are other people out there with the same needs and cravings for a new expression. We are still active filmmakers and will continue to be. Goran Olsson was actually a film consultant for the Swedish Film Institute, and his documentary film, The Black Power Mixtape 1967 to 1975, was awarded 2 Golden Beetles, which are essentially the Swedish version of an Oscar. In fact, he is still working on TV series today. His business partner, Daniel Jonseter, has also worked on countless films, including Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. So the company was really started by people who actually worked in the film industry, unlike some other camera companies we've talked about in the past. Their first product was the A-Cam SP16, which would be announced for sale around 2003, and this camera was billed as the smallest, lightest, and most affordable Super 16mm camera on the market. It would be released later on that year for around $4,600 and would be a reasonable investment for those who wanted a light, inexpensive film camera for projects. But both Goran and Daniel realized that while there was still a demand for film, the world was slowly turning to digital cameras to meet their needs. And with this in mind, they began the development of a digital version of the A-Cam SP16 that they would announce the A-Cam D2 in 2009, a tiny digital 16mm camera.
Today's sponsor, Squarespace, has just been updated to Squarespace 7.1 with its powerful Fluid engine and newly added Blueprint AI and SEO tools. It's the easiest way to get a professional website for your business up and running for anyone who doesn't have a lot of time to, mess around with complicated coding. The new Blueprint AI system helps you build your website from the ground up, tailoring it to your specific business and industry. And instead of having to install a bunch of SEO plugins so people actually see your website, the new SEO tools will help you launch your site and get seen fast with integrated and optimized SEO tools that will help your website not get left behind in the dust. So head on over to squarespace.com for a free trial to test out their awesome new features. And when you're ready to launch, go to squarespace.com/FrameVoyager to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain using the code FrameVoyager.
Tony here from Next Wave DV, and I'm here with Peter from Ikonoskop, and you guys have this incredibly unique camera design that is going to offer a lot of options for filmmakers. So why don't you tell us about it?
Yes, this is our new camera called the ACAM D2. It shoots uncompressed RAW in full HD. It records in a format called Cinema DNG, which is an open standard by Adobe. And it has a CCD with a global shutter.
In 2009, this camera had a really unique set of specifications for a digital film camera. It was able to film internal, uncompressed 12-bit RAW in full HD. It recorded in Cinema DNG RAW and would also include, from what I could tell, ProRes options later on as well.
No, it's an open format. It's Cinema DNG. So you can open up in After Effects, render it out to ProRes, edit it, and then do it online in DaVinci Resolve. It has Sony batteries. We have a HD SDI out, the sound in. We have time code. We have remote.
It's credited by some as being the first camera to actually film with CDNG files, with CDNG files being very popular in early Blackmagic design cameras shortly after this.
But the slower the sensor runs, the colder it is, the slower it runs. And so like Ikonoskop has a really beautiful, smooth image. The sensor that they picked is a little bit smaller and runs faster. So it's actually smaller than even regular 16mm film and runs a little bit faster, so they don't have that, but they cool the sensor, which gives them this like really buttery, creamy, beautiful look, like stunning.
As we mentioned before, it has a 16mm sensor, which when you take a look at the picture of it, it's incredibly tiny compared to what you're used to seeing on digital cameras from this time period. Still, with its interchangeable mount system including PL, C, and more, it could be used with a wider range of 16, 16 Super, and 35mm cine lenses, as well as still lenses. This sensor was a global shutter CCD sensor, which using CCD sensors in cameras seems to always point towards a bitter end, versus those who decided to use CMOS sensor technology. So far, only Sony really survived using CCD sensors in their digital cameras. Still, they decided on using CCD sensors to, as they said, create a unique film-like look. As many claim that CCD sensors give footage a very film-like look with their noise pattern.
Actually, I think what we've done is the first film camera for digital. So I think this, and also that we did the design very much like a film camera, because I usually shoot Super 16, and we did a Super 16 camera before, and we wanted to keep those aesthetics and those experience that film camera designer, especially in France, did with Jean-Pierre Beaulieu and also the Eclair and the Beaulieu and all those cameras that were such a great cameras.
To round out the rest of the specs here, it had 11 stops of dynamic range, could film up to 30 frames per second, had an HD SDI 10-bit out, a max resolution of 1920 by 1080, and weighed all of 3.5 pounds, all for the price of $9,500. This camera is a lot different from most that we've covered in this series in the fact that it is not necessarily trying to compete with a larger market or trying to reach the mind-boggling resolution specs of other camera companies at this time. They wanted to give filmmakers a unique way to achieve a filmic look in an easy-to-access digital format. You can absolutely see how different the footage looks from the clips that were taken with this camera. Besides some of the obvious digital artifacting here and there, it has the look and feel of a 16mm film camera.
You can never leave out poetry from filmmaking, but you could never leave out reality as well. They're equally important, and it's up to the filmmakers to make the mix between poetry and reality. And the film cameras should be tools for them to choose in whatever means. And I also think that camera manufacturers should listen to the filmmakers and also be ahead of the filmmakers. And then the filmmakers can take the tools and make something different out of it.
While many praised the look of the cameras at the time, with some even saying that the filmic look had finally arrived to digital cameras, they had another issue. People had just forgotten about Ikonoskop. With the splash that they had made with the 16mm film camera, the ACAM SP16, they had gained some traction in the industry. But when they decided to announce that they were developing a digital camera, they spent a good amount of time developing it. And by the time they came out, everyone had kind of forgotten about them and moved on. Even with some positive reviews from users on these cameras, the demand for them was just not there, forcing them to release a statement on June 24th, 2013, announcing that they would temporarily be stopping production of the ACAM D2 due to a strained financial situation, but they hope to be able to start production up again. Red Shark News put it perfectly in their article about this announcement, saying, "Given the price of the camera and what it can do, it should have been a hit with a lot of filmmakers, but sadly, it looks like we all really did just forget about it." Only a month later, Ikonoskop would declare bankruptcy in July, and even though they would attempt to find funding to resurrect this camera in the future, it just never panned out for them. With Filmmaker magazine giving them a bit of a eulogy in their article, Digital Motion Picture Cameras in 2014, the next chapter, saying, "Although introduced circa 2008 and seen at every NAB since, Ikonoskop could never quite bring its Trailblazer to the market, or for less than $10,000. Meanwhile, the market moved on, as it always does, serving up cheaper alternatives, and Ikonoskop sought bankruptcy protection last July. And though the company would cease to exist here, there was a bit of a community surrounding these cameras, with the A-Camera D2 shop opening up soon after to be able to service any issues with the camera, and you can still find these cameras from time to time online, available for rental or purchase, and a bit of a small community around them still. But while these cameras were not abandoned in the true sense, it's fairly easy to see what happened to them. In this period of incredible growth in technology in the cinema camera industry, they just couldn't quite break through the noise of Red, Arri, Blackmagic, and other competitors to get a fighting chance in what was a fairly niche market. And that's the lesson we've learned through this series. Some absolutely terrible cameras got to live longer than they needed to, while other promising cameras died off too soon. But that was not the end of the use of the Ikonoskop. In fact, it ended up on a list for Cannes in 2023, as it had been used in a film called The Other Laurens. The DP, Florian Baruti, mentioned adapting a speed booster for the original BMP-CC to the IMS mount of the Ikonoskop and adding a PL mount to make it work. On the first day of shooting, I realized that the camera had much less dynamic range than I had thought, and I started to panic. I had to light every shot a lot more than I'm used to, like we used to do on film back in the days. In the end, it gave us a unique look that you don't see much in modern production. It's interesting to still see this camera get used today, and I even got to use it on a trip out to Banff, Canada last year. It's an interesting camera to try and use, but what perhaps is the most difficult is actually offloading the footage when you're done, having to go through a media deck of sorts to get it to connect to your computer. But when you try and import the DNG files like you normally would, you actually run into glitches in the image files. So the best workaround I've found is to import directly into DaVinci Resolve and then render the files from there. Even though I'm a Premiere guy, what you gonna do? But I have to say, it's a super fun and weird camera to get to play around with, and the 16mm sensor, while being awful in low light settings, really gives you some interesting and unique looks, almost like a very clean looking vintage camera. Thanks for watching this video, and I just want to say a quick thanks to all of our longtime viewers who really got started with us when we started this Abandoned Camera series back in the day when we used to do more stuff on cameras.
Sorry guys, there's just a limit to how many abandoned cameras we can cover, but I appreciate your support through making those, and it got me on the track to making the content we are now. So if you guys would be interested, check out some of the cool content we are putting together today, or go back and do a rewatch of all the old abandoned camera series videos. As always, on this channel, we appreciate all you viewers, and thank you guys for letting us do what we do.